The day of need. Daniel Reyes had learned to live with being invisible. As a single father juggling late bills, early mornings, and a 7-year-old boy who still slept with the hallway light on, he moved through the city like background noise, noticed only when something went wrong. That morning, something had gone wrong early. His delivery truck stalled 2 blocks from St. Catherine's Hospital, steam hissing from the hood like it was tired of trying, just like him. Daniel locked it up, slung his worn backpack over one shoulder, and jogged the rest of the way, already rehearsing the apology he'd give his supervisor for being late. Inside the hospital, the air buzzed with urgency. Nurses rushed past, voices clipped, shoes squeaking against polished floors. As Daniel waited at the reception desk to drop off confidential documents, he heard it, panic wrapped in professionalism. "We need O-negative immediately," a nurse whispered sharply to another. "Pediatric. Massive blood loss. The father's blood isn't compatible, and we're out of reserve." Daniel's steps slowed. O-negative. He knew his blood type the way he knew his son's favorite cereal, because life had forced him to memorize essentials. He watched as a doctor ran a hand through his hair, eyes hollow. "She won't make it through the next hour without a transfusion." The words landed heavy in Daniel's chest. He thought of his son, Mateo, the way he'd clung to him after his mother's funeral 2 years ago, asking questions Daniel couldn't answer. Without fully deciding, Daniel stepped forward. "I'm O-negative," he said quietly. The nurse looked up, startled, then skeptical, scanning his uniform, his tired eyes. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. Paperwork appeared. Consent forms. A quick medical screening. As they walked him toward the donation room, fragments of conversation reached him. The child was 6. Internal injuries from a car accident. Her mother had just landed from an international flight. Her mother was Eleanor Wright. The name struck like a memory he hadn't asked for. Eleanor Wright, the CEO whose face dominated business magazines, whose sharp tongue was almost as famous as her net worth. Months ago, Daniel had stood in her glass office tower, waiting to deliver a package, when she'd stopped mid-conversation, looked him up and down, and laughed. "Do we really let delivery drivers wander the executive floor now?" she'd said loudly, not caring who heard. Security had escorted him out while she smirked, and Daniel had swallowed his humiliation the same way he swallowed everything else, quietly. Now, lying on a hospital bed with a needle in his arm, he stared at the ceiling tiles and felt something twist inside him. Fate had a strange sense of humor. He could walk away. No one knew his name yet. But then he imagined a little girl with tubes and machines, a father pacing helplessly, and a mother who, no matter how cruel, was still a parent facing the unthinkable. Daniel closed his eyes. "It's okay," he murmured when the nurse apologized for the wait. As his blood flowed into the bag, warmth leaving his body, he didn't think about Eleanor Wright. He thought about Mateo's laugh, about the promise he'd made at his wife's grave to always choose kindness when he could, even when the world didn't return it. When the bag filled and the nurse smiled in relief, Daniel felt lightheaded but steady in spirit. Somewhere down the hall, a child's heart kept beating, and for him, that was enough. Part 2, The Moment of Recognition. Eleanor Wright had conquered boardrooms, markets, and rivals, but nothing prepared her for the sound of a doctor saying, "We almost lost her." She stood frozen in the pediatric ICU hallway, designer coat still on, hair perfectly styled despite the tears streaking her makeup. Her daughter, Lily, lay beyond the glass, small and fragile beneath a web of wires. Eleanor's mind replayed the phone call over and over, the assistant's shaking voice, the emergency landing, the drive through traffic she'd never hated more. "She survived because someone donated blood," the doctor continued gently. "An anonymous donor stepped forward when we had none available." Eleanor exhaled a sob she didn't know she'd been holding. Gratitude surged through her, raw and desperate. "I want to thank him," she said immediately. "Please. I need to." Nurses exchanged glances, then nodded. They led her down the corridor to a quiet waiting area where a man sat with a paper cup of water, sleeves rolled down, face pale but calm. He looked up as footsteps approached. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to tilt. Eleanor recognized him instantly, not because of his face, but because of the memory attached to it. The delivery driver. The man she'd mocked, dismissed, erased with a joke she'd never thought about again. His eyes held no anger, only a tired steadiness that made her chest ache. "You," she whispered, the word heavy with shame. Daniel stood slowly, wincing just a little. "Your daughter's going to be okay," he said simply, as if that was the only thing that mattered. Eleanor's carefully built armor cracked. Her voice broke. Apologies crowded her throat, tangled with gratitude and regret. "I treated you terribly," she managed. "And you still," Daniel shook his head gently. "This wasn't about you," he replied. "I'm a dad. I heard a kid needed help." Tears spilled freely now. Eleanor realized that for all her power, all her money, she had been utterly helpless today, and this man, whom she'd once considered insignificant, had been the reason her daughter would grow up. "Thank you isn't enough," she said, almost pleading. "Please let me do something." Daniel picked up his backpack. "Just take care of her," he said. "And maybe remember that people are more than what they wear or where they work." He turned to leave, pausing only to add, "I need to pick up my son." As he walked away down the corridor, Eleanor watched him go, feeling smaller and changed in a way no loss on a balance sheet had ever made her feel. Later that night, sitting beside Lily's bed, holding her tiny hand as it squeezed back weakly, Eleanor understood a truth she'd ignored for years: real strength wasn't loud, rich, or admired. Sometimes it showed up quietly, gave what it could, and asked for nothing in return. And she knew that no matter how successful she became, she would never forget the day a single dad, once invisible to her, became the reason her world didn't end.